In 2011, I went out there with some ecologists and we walked around what was then Eastern Star Gas's Bibblewindi coal seam gas wells. And what I saw was a catastrophe. Wastewater pumped into the woodlands, dead trees, dead kangaroos in wastewater ponds that were unlined, rusty infrastructure. It was a reckless, dirty industry who thought in some back country where no one cared, they could sneak in and do their worst, and they were doing exactly that. Look how they treat our beloved country when they think they can get away with it. That's the respect they've got. They'll pump their crap into the woods. They'll pump their crap into your water supply. They'll pump their crap into you. That's what this is really about. They will poison us for a buck.
At the June 2017 Narrabri Gas Project CCC, Mr Peter Mitchley, during the course of the discussion, came up and said, I'd like to inform the assembled here that Santos is not going to respond to the disposal of the salts. And he justified that by saying, we are not going to be responsible for the disposal of the salts because we are having a contractor remove them for us and take them away. Then the Department of Planning told him very politely, Mr Mitchley, believe it or not, legally, you are still responsible to maintain that those salts go to a registered landfill.
They're bringing millions of litres of water to the surface. To me, opposing coal seam gas is a no-brainer.
Santos has been operating in the Pilliga for some years, and prior to that was Eastern Star Gas. One of the developments that Santos introduced to the exploration project was a large-scale water treatment facility. That's known as Leewood.
What they do is they drill down to the coal seams. It's about 1k down, 1,000 metres.
Everything that you don't want on the surface of the planet is in that coal seam down there.
It's toxic. It's for water from a kilometre down under the ground that's sitting there amongst the coal.
When methane is exhumed from the ground, then there are all the naturally occurring contaminants as well.
The water that they do treat, we don't believe is going to be treated well enough. They're going to use to spray on crops out the front here.
Santos is very good at producing lovely green pictures of crops that are irrigated with coal seam gas water. But even in their own gas field, Fairview in Queensland, they eventually poisoned their plantation and lucerne crop.
But I can assure you all that the government is listening. The government is listening to each and every one of you. If you'd like to listen, mate, if you'd like to listen. What we have done is we've banned evaporation ponds.
In 2011, when evaporation ponds were a very hot topic and many communities were arguing that these should be banned, evaporation ponds were banned, but we still have ponds. They're very similar to those evaporation ponds. In fact, they look exactly the same as those evaporation ponds, and we still have contamination results as a consequence of these ponds. This water should all be containerised. It should not be allowed to be in open ponds with liners. It just defies belief, it truly does.
In this EIS, they say we're going to clean up that water and irrigate. But what do you do with the brine when you clean it up? There's a lot of it. And if you work out the tonnes and tonnes of salt, where is it going to go?
They propose to use the produced water in dust suppression, which means that they put it in water tankers and they spray it on the roads. They also propose to reuse in the drilling process.
Water is their biggest enemy, a waste product to them.
These ponds over the back here, which are state-of-the-art, world's best, have been found to be leaking. Santos have tried to downplay it.
I went on the Santos tour and asked them where the salt was going to go. They said it was going to an accredited facility in Sydney, not yet determined. And I said, OK, what's the address? And they said, probably a disused mine.
They will produce 100 tonnes of that a day and claim it is general waste.
In the August CCC meeting, the discussion about salt disposal again came up, due mainly to a Four Corners program called TRASH. that had been aired slightly before. The question to Mr. Mitchley was, in the light of the program and in the light that we're not sure what's going on, will Santos now respond to the disposal of the salt question? Mr. Mitchley said point blank, I told you before, we won't discuss the salts. They don't want to answer the hard questions.
The two salts are there, potassium chloride and sodium chloride, in large volumes. People think it's just salt, but in such enormous quantities, it's a massive pollutant.
It's material that is very salty. You can't, I don't think, safely dispose into creeks and streams because you overpower the river system with this foreign water.
They're also talking about potentially flushing produced water through Bohena Creek. It meets the Namoy River, which feeds all downstream irrigators and all downstream communities. That has grave implications for this entire region.
Most of the time this doesn't have any surface water, but after heavy rain, streams can flow along the surface. Very rarely is it bank-to-bank water. You can see how even I've gone down 6 inches and the moisture content in the sand is really high.
Putting produced water into a creek to me seems like a crazy thing to do.
That sounds insane to me. What would you want to take water out of a coal seam and put it in a creek? It just seems completely mad.
Produced water is wastewater. This whole idea of somehow you magically treat your water and then you can release it to the creek is just unacceptable in the terms of the chemistry.
This particular pond actually leaked. Results showed up that the uranium was detected in the water 20 times the drinking water standard. It was the first ever official case of aquifer contamination in Australia, and they got fined $1,500.
What occurred here is that both drilling companies discharged their fluids by one method or another into the forest from the drilling pad. The worst thing I've seen is these spills and the number of them. There's Bohena 2, Bohena 4, 44L where we are now, Bohena 5, Bohena 3, Bohena 7, Bohena 6. Then we go to the Bibbulwindi series. You've got Bibbulwindi 24, you've got Bibbulwindi 14. You've got the high point vent discharge that happened where Peter Mitchley says, oh, it was only 2 to 3 litres of water and 2 teaspoons of salt. But if you see the photographic evidence of it and see the soil analysis of the area, you know that they weren't telling the truth. And of course the major Bibbulwindi spill, which is, if you read all the reports, Santos told Big Porky there.
You literally walk into the dead zone, there's no insects, there's no flies. How can there be a patch of Australian bush with no flies?
They've been trying to clean that dead zone up by reacting it with other chemicals. But what's happening is the salt has migrated down a few feet and is stuck above a layer of clay.
One of my friends fell into some of the soil there and had burns on her leg that came up later that night. And, you know, angry red rashes, and you're thinking, well, there's got to be something that's not right about what's happened to that soil.
The area literally became a wasteland. All of the trees died, nothing grew. That went to court. Orders were made that they clean up the area.
So what you're looking at here now is a mulched rehabilitation. Apparently they've spent some $20 million or something on rehabilitation of the different sites, but this is the major area. Mixed gypsum and spread mulch and then thrown the logs over the top of it. And then they water it to try and flush the salt and whatever's doing the damage here clear of the soil for rehabilitation purposes.
Cypress is the first thing to go and the last thing to come back. And it's still spreading. There's a big old cypress over there, which is behind this clump of bull oak. He's not officially on the pad where the kill zone is, but he's getting affected by it. You can see just a little frond out this side alive. The top's just about dead, if not. So he's getting affected by this spill. They stick all this water on here with the gypsum. It's going to flush up the salts, which is the idea of the gypsum, just to get it out of the clay barrier, which is very shallow. Get it up there, put it in suspension into the top layer of material, of the sandy material.
and then move it down. Now that's quite legal. The New South Wales government said, use copious quantities of water, dilute the salts and move them on. Well, you move them on, they're going to create problems.
That water will run to Walgett, to Burke, all the way down to South Australia, and people will drink that water. People don't realise that it's going to affect a lot more of us than first thought.
The other problem, of course, is gypsum is also salty itself, right? And it also contains sulphate. The sulphates also feed the natural bacteria called sulphate-reducing bacteria. Now, sulphate-reducing bacteria by itself is not bad for you, but they produce hydrogen sulphide, which corrodes steel and corrodes cement. This is the bane of their industry. In a sense, this is like a cancer because it grows and nobody really knows how to control it. It's all trial and error. Every one of these spill sites is an accident waiting to happen. If it gets out and the people realise how big it is, their industry has had it.
So you were like the first person who sounded the alarm on all this, weren't you?
Yes, yes, I was.
Stinky old water. It's come out of the dam over here, and it's just gone right down through this watercourse, split it a bit each way. I'd suggest substantially more than 10,000, but anyway, 10,000 is the figure.
The Narrabri region contains sodic soils. When salty water is absorbed in sodic soils, it goes solid. What that means is that plants' roots can no longer penetrate the soil. So the soil is poisoned by the salt, as well as getting so solid that plants can't grow.
It's very hard to break. In fact, there's the colouring of the salts, there. So their salts are coming to the surface here, and this is what Santos is trying to flush away.
This was a plant that was dealing with the water from 23 wells. Well, let's go 850 and you know, this stuff is just going to be brought to the surface continuously, and they just haven't got a solution for it, short of dumping in a landfill. So.
Nothing lasts forever except a CSG spill, eh?
Salt will get you in the end.